The sentence that travels. The Grade 4 Ecosystems class has just finished the yarn web. The students are back at their desks. The teacher has placed on the front board a single sentence stem. It reads, when one part of an ecosystem disappears, then farm I. She has not written anything else. She's not going to write anything else. The students will write the rest. She says, take 2 minutes. Write your own ending. Use what you saw today. Just one sentence. You can write more on the back if you want, but the front needs one sentence. The room goes quiet. The pencils start moving. Some students write fast. Some students chew the end of their pencil and stare at the ceiling. After 2 minutes, the teacher says, turn to your partner. Read each other's sentences. Help each other find the best one between you. You have 2 more minutes. The buzz starts. Pairs talk. One student says, my sentence is too vague. Yours is better. Another says, yours is good, but you wrote affects, and we are not allowed to use affects anymore. There is laughter at that. The teacher has been training them. The verb matters. The verb is half the meaning. After 2 minutes, she says, now tell me, whose pair has a sentence we should put on the wall? Hands go up. The class hears 5 candidate sentences. They argue. They refine. 20 minutes later, the class has co-authored a single sentence that captures what the lesson taught them. The sentence goes on the wall. It reads, living things depend on each other and their environment for what they need to survive. When one part is lost, the change ripples through the whole web. That sentence was not on any plan. It is not in the textbook. It is not what the teacher wrote in her planner. It is what the students built. And because they built it, they will not forget it. This is generalization. This is the 5th phase of a concept-based inquiry lesson. And it is, in many ways, the most important phase of all. Because this is the phase where the lesson stops being about a unit and starts being about the world. What generalization is? A generalization in the language of concept-based inquiry is a statement that captures a relationship between 2 or more concepts. It is a sentence that tells the truth, not just about the cases the students studied, but about all cases of the same kind. It is the sentence that travels. Let me show you the difference between a fact and a generalization. The French Revolution happened in 1789 is a fact. It is true about one event. It does not travel. The American Revolution lasted from 1775 to 1783 is a fact. Same problem. These facts have to be memorized one at a time. They do not connect. They do not help with new cases. The brain stores them as isolated items. They have a short shelf life. By the end of summer break, half of them are gone. Now here a generalization. Revolutions occur when an existing order loses legitimacy. Opposition becomes organized, and a triggering event mobilizes action. Their outcomes depend on what replaces the old order, not merely on what was overthrown. That sentence is about every revolution. The French, the American, the Russian, the Iranian, the Arab Spring, and more importantly, every revolution that has not yet happened. A student who owns that sentence can read a news story from a country in upheaval in 2030 and apply the framework. Is the existing order losing legitimacy? Is opposition becoming organized? Is there a triggering event? Is there a replacement order being built? That sentence travels. That sentence is a tool the student carries for the rest of their life. This is the whole point of concept-based inquiry. The lesson teaches the facts but lands on the principle. The unit covers the content but produces the sentence. The student leaves with a fact set and a generalization. The fact set may fade. The generalization does not. The generalization gets sharper with every new case the student encounters. A unit without a generalization is a unit that did not happen. It was a tour. It was a stack of facts. It did not change the student. The generalization is where the change lives. Who writes the generalization? This is the rule. This is the move. This is the thing that most teachers get wrong and that most CBI training emphasizes three different ways. The teacher does not write the generalization on the board. The students do. The teacher knows what the target generalization is. The teacher wrote it in their planner before the unit started. The teacher could put it on the board in 3 seconds. But the teacher does not. Not yet. Not until the students have drafted their own. Because the moment the teacher writes the sentence, the students stop thinking. They copy it. They memorize it. They put it on the test. And it does not transfer. It is just one more piece of information they were given. It is not their tool. It is the teacher's tool on loan. What the teacher does instead is provide the scaffolds that let the students produce the sentence themselves. The sentence stem, the conceptual question, the concept bank. These three tools, used in the right sequence, get the students to a sentence very close to the one the teacher had in mind. But it is the student's sentence. They built it. They own it. It is the difference between borrowing a tool and owning one. The borrowed tool gets returned and forgotten. The owned tool stays in the kit. I know this requires patience. The students' first drafts will be weak. They will be too vague. They will use the banned verbs. They will miss the heart of the concept. You will read their sentences and feel the urge to rewrite them. Do not. Refine through questions, not corrections. Ask, what word could you use instead of affects? What is happening that affects is not strong enough to describe? Wait. Let them try a different word. Let them argue with each other. The sentence will improve. It will get there. It just takes longer than you think it should. There is a deep principle here. Whoever writes the sentence owns the thinking. If you write it, you own the thinking. If they write it, they own the thinking. School is the place where the thinking transfers from the teacher to the student. Generalization is the moment that transfer either happens or fails to happen. Make it happen. Sentence stems. The most powerful scaffold for generalization is the sentence stem. A sentence stem is the beginning of a sentence with a blank where the meaningful word would go. The student finishes it. Here are 5 sentence stems you can use in almost any subject. When argue, then argue. This is the workhorse. It forces a causal claim. The student must put a condition on one side and a consequence on the other. Most generalizations have this structure underneath. When inequality becomes too great, then existing orders lose legitimacy. When density is less than the surrounding fluid, then the object floats. When a story explores an idea through specific events, then we call that idea the theme. X drives Y because hook. This forces students to put one concept in the driver's seat and explain the mechanism. Strong verbs, drives, causes, shapes, constraints. The because forces the explanation. Across all our cases, we noticed that this forces students to commit to a pattern that spans the cases. It is a sentence about the cross-comparison chart. It is the sentence the chart was designed to produce. X is different from Y because alternto, but they share ek. This is good when students need to distinguish two related concepts: topic versus theme, physical change versus chemical change, authority versus power. Through chalk shapes, this is good for advanced students. It forces 3 concepts into one relationship. Through propaganda, power shapes belief. Through inheritance, biology shapes diversity. Through metaphor, language shapes thought. Stems are not training wheels. They are scaffolding. The student is supported, but the student is the one walking. The stem provides the structure. The student provides the substance. After enough practice, students start producing strong sentences without the stems. That is the goal. Stems first, independence later. The draft, refine, agree, process. Once the stem is on the board, the class moves through a 3-step process. It looks simple. It is simple. But the 3 steps must happen in this order. The first step is draft. Every student writes their own first attempt. Privately, no talking, no collaboration, 2 to 3 minutes of silence. The reason for this is straightforward. If you let students start in pairs, the more confident student talks first and the more uncertain student agrees. The thinking is one person's thinking. By making students draft in silence first, you ensure that everyone has put something on paper. Everyone has thought. The second step is refine. Now students turn to a partner. They read each other's drafts. They ask, what is the strongest version of this idea between us? Can we combine your draft and mine? What word is doing the most work in each sentence? Pairs refine. They produce a single sentence that is better than either of their originals. This takes another 3 to 4 minutes. The third step is agree. The pairs come back to the whole class. 3 or 4 pairs share their sentences. The class debates. The teacher captures the language on the board. I like depends on from the first pair. I like ripples through from the second pair. Can we combine those? The class drafts a class version. It is not perfect, but it is shared. It is written on a sentence strip. It goes on the wall. It will be revisited, refined, and tested for the rest of the unit and possibly beyond. Draft, refine, agree. The whole thing takes 15 to 20 minutes. Far less time than a lecture would have taken. Far more learning happens. A closer look, the Connect 4 strategy. There is one specific strategy in concept-based inquiry that combines organization and generalization in a single move. It is called Connect 4. I want to describe it because it is unusually powerful when used well. In a grade 5 class studying innovators, a teacher named Catherine sets up Connect 4 like this. She gives each group of 4 students a placemat divided into 4 quadrants. In each quadrant, one student fills in details about a different innovator they have studied. Pablo Picasso, Muhammad Ali, Albert Einstein, Mahatma Gandhi. The students write the innovator's name, their motivation or inspiration, and the challenges they encountered. Then Catherine gives the groups 2-sentence stems. Something can motivate individuals to innovate. For example, hike. And when innovators encounter a challenge, they arauk. For example, Jimreik. The groups must complete both sentences using evidence from all 4 of their innovators. They must find what is true across all 4. The Connect 4 name comes from the connection. 4 cases, 1 sentence. The students cannot lean on one case. They must find the pattern that holds for all 4. This forces conceptual thinking. It forces synthesis. It produces sentences like an experience or problem that causes an emotional reaction can motivate individuals to innovate. For example, Picasso was inspired by his father's art. Gandhi was driven by injustice in India. Ali was driven by his stolen bike. And Einstein was inspired by a compass he received as a child. That sentence is gorgeous. It is not what the teacher wrote in her plan. It is better than what the teacher wrote in her plan. Because it is grounded in the student's 4 cases, with the student's 4 examples, in the student's words. It is the sentence the students will quote later in their own work. It is the sentence that travels. Connect 4 works in any subject. 4 characters in literature. 4 economic systems in social studies. 4 climate zones in geography. 4 chemical reactions in science. 4 geometric proofs in mathematics. The strategy is generic. The content changes. The conceptual move is the same. Synthesize across cases. Produce one sentence that holds for all. The strong verb rule. I want to talk about verbs, because verbs are where most generalizations go wrong. There are certain verbs that show up in weak generalizations. Affects, impacts, influences, is, are, have. These verbs are vague. They tell you something is connected to something else, but they do not tell you how. Inequality affects revolutions. That is true. It is also useless. It is the kind of sentence a student writes when they're trying to sound smart without actually saying anything. The verb does no work. The sentence does not travel. Now hear a stronger verb. Inequality drives revolutions when the order loses legitimacy. The verb is drives. It commits to a direction. It commits to a causal claim. It is specific enough to be tested against new cases. It travels. Other strong verbs: alters, requires, transforms, constrains, shapes, limits, enables, produces, triggers, reverses. These verbs carry meaning, they make a claim. They can be wrong. That last point matters. A generalization that cannot be wrong is not a generalization. It is a platitude. A strong verb makes a claim that can be tested. So when you train students in generalization, train them in verbs. Ban the weak ones, reward the strong ones. Some teachers post a list on the wall: banned verbs in red, allowed verbs in green. Students learn fast. After a few weeks, you will hear students correcting each other. You wrote affects. You cannot write affects. What is actually happening? The classroom begins to operate on a higher level of precision. Sentences sharpen. Thinking sharpens with them. This is not about being fussy with language. This is about training the mind to make claims that can be tested. Vague verbs let the mind off the hook. Strong verbs put the mind to work. Watching a generalization improve. Let me show you a generalization as it is refined through draft, refine, agree. I want you to hear how a sentence grows. The Grade 4 Ecosystems class. The first draft from a student named Maya. Animals need their habitat. That is the starting sentence. It is true. It is also weak. It uses the weak verb need. It does not capture interdependence. It does not capture the cascade. The pair refine. Maya and her partner Jonas combine their sentences. Animals depend on their habitat to live. Better, they have moved from need to depend on. They have added to live, but it is still about the one direction. The animal depends on the habitat. The habitat does not depend on anything. The class discussion. Another pair offers living things depend on each other and their environment. Now the relationship is two-way. Living things depend on each other. They also depend on their environment. The web is in the sentence, but the cascade is still missing. The teacher asks, what happens when one part is removed? What did you feel when you dropped the yarn? The students remember the yarn. A student says, when one part disappears, the others get pulled too. The teacher writes that on the board. The class joins the two ideas. Living things depend on each other and their environment. When one part disappears, the change ripples through the whole web. Read that aloud. Listen to the verbs. Depend, disappears, ripples. Each verb is doing work. Each verb is specific. Each verb is testable. That sentence is a generalization that holds for ponds, forests, deserts, coral reefs, and the inside of a human gut microbiome. It travels. It travels because every word in it earns its place. 3 drafts, 20 minutes of class time. A sentence that will sit on the wall for the rest of the unit, get applied to new ecosystems, get refined again if necessary, and live in the students' heads for years. That is what generalization costs. That is what generalization buys. Common mistakes in generalization. A few honest words about what goes wrong. The first mistake is the teacher writing the sentence. We have talked about this. It is the cardinal error. If the teacher writes it, the students copy it. They do not own it. Resist this. The second mistake is accepting the first draft. The first draft will almost always be too weak. The teacher who is trying to keep the lesson moving forward will accept the first draft, write it on the board, and move on. The lesson finishes on time, but the generalization has not been refined. The students leave with a sentence that does not travel. Slow down, refine. The extra 10 minutes are not waste. They are the lesson. The third mistake is accepting a fact instead of a principle. A student writes, The French Revolution happened because of inequality. That is a fact about the French Revolution. It is not a generalization. A generalization would be revolutions happen when inequality grows large enough to break the legitimacy of the existing order. Listen for the difference. The fact names the specific case. The generalization names the pattern. Teachers must learn to hear the difference and push for the second one. Ask, could you say that about the Russian Revolution too? Could you say it about the Arab Spring? Make the sentence true about all of them, not just one. The fourth mistake is overgeneralizing. A student writes, all people become violent when their needs are not met. Too strong. Some people remain peaceful. Some channel grievance into creative work. The student has overshot. The teacher's job is to refine downward. Is that always true? What about Gandhi? What about the labor movement? Maybe the rule is more specific. Maybe it is when needs go unmet for long enough and no peaceful channels exist, violence becomes more likely. That is closer to what the cases actually show. Overgeneralizing is the cousin of weak generalizing. Both miss the precision the concept deserves. The fifth mistake is not testing the generalization. Once the sentence is on the board, the work is not over. The sentence must be tested against new cases. Right then, within the same lesson if possible. Does our rule hold for this fresh case I'm about to give you? The test reveals whether the generalization is the right shape. If it fails, refine. If it holds, the students gain confidence in the rule they built. Either way, the testing is part of the construction. Why generalizations stick? A brief note on why generalizations are so durable. There is a famous finding in cognitive science called the generation effect. When we generate information ourselves, we remember it dramatically better than when we receive the same information from someone else. Studies have shown the effect repeatedly across decades. The gap is enormous. Generated material can be retained at rates of 70 or 80%. Received material drops below 20% within weeks. Generalization is generation. The student is producing the sentence. The brain is doing the work of synthesis. The brain is comparing cases, weighing dimensions, choosing verbs, refining language. By the time the sentence is on the wall, the brain has run the sentence through 10 or 15 passes. Each pass strengthens the memory. By the time the lesson ends, the sentence is encoded with a depth that no lecture could match. There is also something called elaborative encoding. When new information is linked to a network of existing concepts, it is stored more durably than when it stands alone. A generalization, by definition, is a relationship between concepts. The sentence is already a network. Each concept in it links to other concepts the student already knows. The brain stores the sentence not as an isolated item, but as a node in a thick web. Future learning attaches to the node. The node grows stronger over time. This is the reason generalizations work. They are short, they are owned, they are densely connected to other concepts. They are repeatedly tested against new cases. Each feature deepens the encoding. Each lesson that uses the generalization strengthens it further. By the end of a school year, a student who has built 10 or 15 generalizations of this kind has a conceptual toolkit that no factual recall test can measure. The student carries the toolkit out into the world. The toolkit does not fade. What you can do tomorrow. For the next lesson you plan, write your target generalization in your planner. Pick the unit. Look at the concept. Compose in your own words the sentence you want students to walk away owning. Make it short. Use strong verbs. Test it against the cases the students will study. Make sure it holds for all of them. Then never write that sentence on the board. Not in your slides, not in your handouts, not in your prompts. Instead, prepare 3 sentence stems. They should be variations that point toward the same idea from different angles. Hand the stems to students after the investigation in the cross comparison chart. Run draft, refine, agree. Watch what happens. The students will produce a sentence very close to yours. Often it will be better than yours. Almost always it will include a phrase or image you did not anticipate. Capture their sentence. Put their sentence on the wall. You are no teaching the way the brain learns. You have moved the thinking from your head to theirs. You have given them a tool that will travel. Looking back, looking forward. In this chapter, we walked through the fifth phase of a concept-based inquiry lesson. We saw what a generalization is and what it does. It captures a relationship between two or more concepts. It is true across cases. It is the sentence that travels. We named the cardinal rule. The teacher does not write the generalization, the students do. We met the scaffolds that make this possible. Sentence stems. The draft, refine, agree process. The Connect 4 strategy. The strong verb rule. We watched a generalization grow through 3 drafts. We heard the 5 common mistakes and how to avoid them. And we touched on the cognitive science underneath. The generation effect, elaborative encoding. But a generalization, however beautiful, is not yet proof. The students believe the sentence. The teacher believes the sentence. The class has put it on the wall, but the world has not yet tested it. The sentence has held up against the cases the students studied. Will it hold up against a case they have never seen? In the next chapter, we move into the 6th phase of the lesson. The phase where the sentence either survives or breaks. The phase where the concept is taken into new territory and asked to do work. The phase where the lesson finally becomes useful for life outside school.